Like many around my age, being in our mid-20s right now, I'm sure we've all experienced a very similar exposure to Star Wars. We were first exposed to Star Wars with the prequels growing up. In love with this Star Wars stuff, someone would have introduced us to the original trilogy. From there, we then watched the Clone Wars animated series, fell in love with how this series enriched the Star Wars mythology, expanding on locations and characters we never got to see in the films. And then we remember this day. The day that Disney bought Star Wars. From there, we've had an interesting, let's say, series of events.
And they've stopped thinking about storytelling because they actually look down on the audience.
It's a terrible show.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I got bad for
The Book of Boba Fett was not good.
A prioritization of quantity over quality.
How stupid they must think the audience is.
A horribly written character where no one is interested anymore.
But why does it feel like this train has derailed? What was the secret ingredient, the secret sauce in Lucas's Star Wars that provided such enthralling stories?
And there's a lot of psychology involved in it.
Well, to figure that out, we need to first define what Star Wars is. Star Wars, in its original nature, is a hero's journey.
Well, the conflict between good and evil is the basic conflict.
George was inspired by the Seven Samurai, Flash Gordon and Westerns, but above all by Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey.
It's about good and evil, but heroes, what makes a hero?
George is making a very, very strong point through entertainment.
George was curious if we could update the myth of old for the next generation.
The whole thing in Star Wars was to take ideas, psychological motifs that are in mythology. I said, I wonder if people still think the way they thought then. Mythology is really a way for society so that they have a common belief system. So what I wanted to do is go back and find the psychological motifs that underlie that. The idea of why do we think the way we think, why do we do what we do, why do we form our society the way we find it?
If we could explore old psychological motifs.
And it was in the guise of an entertainment film.
It's about harmony, I guess, but told in a wonderful, entertaining, as I say, way.
Using the Force as a way to explore the concept of joy and pleasure.
Pleasure is purely self-centered. It's all about your pleasure. It's about you.
I need him.
It's created by a self-centered motive of greed.
I want more.
Joy is compassion. Joy is giving yourself to somebody else or something else.
Exploring good and evil and how it presents itself.
That is ultimately the core of the whole dark side, light side of the Force.
In a way, George Lucas's exploration of such motifs aids to the incredible case that movie makers, filmmakers, real artists are now the modern day philosophers.
So what does Star Wars and Indiana Jones say about the world you want to create?
I was a great dad.
I'll not leave you here. I've got to save you.
You already have.
I tried.
However, let's stay on track. So if Star Wars is a mythology tale about good and evil, about fathers and sons, wouldn't it be fitting that he passed on that knowledge? Like a master with his apprentice. Well, he did, in that of Dave Filoni.
And so I was lucky enough to find Dave Filoni.
Tutoring under Lucas during the Clone Wars, Dave learned a lot off the man. How to tell a compelling story, how to be a compelling filmmaker, but probably the most important thing to have taught him was his philosophy on life.
We have a destiny if we want to follow it. We live for a reason and must discover what it is. The only way to overcome the dark side is through discipline.
It takes strength to resist the dark side.
Because it takes discipline and training and practice and commitment.
On what the Force is and what it means, what the Jedi and the Sith represent. And that's what we got. During the Clone Wars, we had the two expand on what George intended for this world and for these characters and his philosophy.
The importance of Clone Wars that cannot be understated is that it was the last huge expansion of the Star Wars universe that came directly from George Lucas. Because it came from George, it's so tapped into the history of cinema and the stuff that inspired him.
The interesting thing about the Clone Wars is that in the normal course of the Skywalker saga, it's not told. One thing that this gives me a chance to do is to go out and broaden the canvas of what Star Wars is about.
He got more and more interested in pushing the limits of that and seeing, almost what could break it. Can you guys do a giant Godzilla-sized creature, Zilla Beast? Okay, great. Can you guys do a zombie film? Can you guys do a Hitchcock-style film? Can you do Seven Samurai in 22 minutes?
Filoni shepherding those wishes, birthing these ideas to the screen, understanding where the line was with the lore. with the storytelling and with the characters.
The only way we'd feel comfortable telling a story about Yoda exploring the really trippy sides of the Force is if that got the blessing from George.
When we deal directly with the Force, Christian Taylor and I feel very strongly that, that word has to come directly from George.
Here's a great example. So one of my favorite series of episodes comes in the form of the Mortis arc in season 3. In it, our trio of heroes discover an ancient realm that hosts beings locked in an eternal war with each other. The son, the daughter, and the father, who resides over the both of them.
I think George really started to delve back into the mythology that he created about the Force itself. A lot of the notes from Mortis come from a really old binder that George has that has his original writings on what the Force is and what makes it up.
The events of the arc aside, what is to note is that Lucas and Filoni both wanted to include ancient Sith from the expanded canon, Darth Revan and Bane.
I was very apprehensive of this scene, as cool as it was, because of the implication of it.
But ultimately decided not to make them canon even though they wanted to. Not to include them because it would break the law of the Force and how it works.
Because they just can't exist in that form. They can't exist in that way. I thought this would be good, but I wanted to do this, but it doesn't jive with my bigger explanation of the Force.
This brings us to Disney. In acquiring Star Wars, they proceeded to go off with their own plans for 7, 8, and 9, not listening to Lucas.
They decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing, and so I decided, fine. I made the decision to sell the company.
This disregard for Lucas's vision should have been the first sign of trouble.
These are my kids. Well, no,
it's your family. It's the last story. It's your story.
But
it's
in the end,
you.
But I knew there's 3 more stories, and I knew that was going to probably take, to do it right would take about 10 years. They looked at the stories and they said, we want to make something for the fans.
The Force Awakens was subsequently a mirror of Episode 4, too afraid to do anything new with the saga, in a way ignoring Lucas's desire for these films to all be unique and different.
The first week starting Episode 3 was George wanted to see 10 planets for the war to be happening on.
The photographs and the descriptions of these extraordinary planets and worlds.
Every movie I worked very hard to make them different. I make them completely different with different planets, with different spaceships.
And following George's rules, they have to be completely distinct from one another.
Every time you do one, it's like a new adventure.
Now, in response to this complaint, they made Episode 8 the opposite. If 7 stuck too closely to the original, then 8 did away with it all, disregarding the mythos behind the saga, doing its own thing, so much so to the point where the movie acted as if it hated Star Wars.
It's time to let old things die.
Now, due to the negative response from The Last Jedi, they backtracked and doubled down on nostalgia.
A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect.
Too afraid to do anything new, yet again. Believe it or not, The Rise of Skywalker was the start of the problems. Whilst this was happening, Filoni was confined to Rebels, a much more toned down brother series to the Clone Wars, but equally expanding this world in new and interesting ways, doubling down on characters we didn't get to see much of in the movies, and expanding this universe with characters he brought over from the Clone Wars. This is where we reach... The Mandalorian was a turning point for Filoni, what felt like a saving grace to Star Wars fans. The Clone Wars guy, Lucas's apprentice, was going to be heading to live action. Now before I go any further, I first want to outline a concept presented by French sociologist Jean Baudrillard in relation to the idea of postmodernism. Jean said that we are in danger of becoming mirrors of mirrors, poor reflections of the original thing itself. With Star Wars, for instance, George was inspired by a series of elements I mentioned before, elements that became the Star Wars we know today. However, the people making Star Wars now grew up watching Star Wars, not the influences.
After seeing the prequels, I was like, I relate.
100%.
Wait, what? What do you mean you relate? Anakin's a cautionary tale. You shouldn't want to see yourself in him. I have a feeling Hedlund doesn't understand what Lucas was trying to do with Anakin. Without understanding those original influences, what George wanted to explore with the Force, what he wanted to say about life, well, all we're left with is a poor reflection.
If some people have taken those ideas and then distorted them, and you end up in a cult.
A cult, you say? Jean made a point of this. He said, within a simulation we can categorize 4 successive phases. The first is our basic reality. This is Star Wars. Then there are masks that pervert this basic reality. They then mask the absence of this reality before the last phase finally being an image that no longer resembles the original reality. In simpler terms, in moving away from Lucas's vision of Star Wars, it's no longer Star Wars.
Fold in what I know about Star Wars and what I love about Star Wars into what she's always pushing for.
This can be seen with the latest Disney Plus series, The Acolyte, in which Hedlund doesn't understand what George was trying to say. In not understanding it, she seeks to understand it by changing it so that it fits her worldview. So it makes sense to her.
I'm really interested in Star Wars from the perspective of bad guys.
Yeah, 100% dark side user right here.
I mean, that's why I was driven to write this story.
Sounds like Sith mentality to me.
Queen, mother, witch. Witch. Don't forget that one.
Don't forget witch.
Yeah.
This is how we've ended up with a witch coven and a Sith that thinks he's the victim.
I don't make the rules. The Jedi do.
This particular institution may not be the group of heroes that are totally nobly intentioned.
Because some people have taken those ideas and then distorted them.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
This isn't just misunderstanding the canon and characters, but misunderstanding the essential messaging of the saga, what the Force means and what it represents.
The universal question is, am I a good person?
Being a Jedi to Lucas is about self-actualization, being selfless and not selfish. It's about being a good person. It's not about dualism.
Are you a good person?
I try to be a good person. You live in two worlds here. Happiness is pleasure, and happiness is joy. Pleasure is purely self-centered. It's all about your pleasure. It's about you. We all have good and evil in us, because we have the selfish side of us and we have the compassionate side of us.
What he's saying there is that we both have good and bad, but that the dark side is inherently corrupting, so we need to turn towards the light.
What happens when you go to the dark side is it goes out of balance and then you get really selfish.
It's greed and selfishness that turns people to the dark side, that turns people to the Sith.
The dark side is pleasure, biological, and temporary, and easy to achieve.
It is more powerful than you know.
And those who oppose it are more powerful than you'll ever be.
The light side is joy, everlasting and difficult to achieve.
That living in the light is balance. Yeah, the Jedi are absolutely right. They're absolutely the good guys. Now, some would say,
at the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out.
Sure, we would eventually see their hubris blind them, that in order to avoid this, we need to adopt a more grey understanding of the Force. But this is a misunderstanding of the Force.
That's not how the Force works.
There's no such thing as a grey Jedi.
The Force is not about dualism, about having equal goodness and equal badness. It's about seeing both, accepting it, but still turning towards the light. Once we are able to acknowledge that hubris, we can then transcend it, self-actualizing into something like the living Force itself.
What you faced was a reflection of your hubris in the shadow of your soul.
This can be seen with Yoda in the Clone Wars too, acknowledging and accepting his darker side, but still turning towards the light.
Part of you I am, part of all that lives. But power over me you have not. Through patience and training, it is I who control you.
Yoda's self-reflection is what grants him enlightenment.
You have conquered your hubris.
Lucas wants us to move towards the light.
An old friend has learned the path to immortality.
Qui-Gon.
It matters which side we choose, even if there will never be more light than darkness, even if there can be no more joy in the galaxy than there is pain.
That a true Jedi sees the good and evil within himself and chooses to turn towards the light.
I don't turn toward the light because it means someday I'll win some sort of cosmic game. I turn toward it because it is the light.
That's the core of Star Wars.
Qui-Gon even says, I turn towards the light because it's there. There's no gray. There's no, that's pretend fan fiction shit.
Hedlund wants us to have both the good and evil and be able to tap into both.
I really like the gray Jedi code.
There is no grey Jedi.
You know, actually, I'm a Gemini. I like to I would be both.
I guess I'd be gray.
There's no such thing as a gray Jedi. These are George Lucas's words, not mine, so fuck you if you disagree with me.
I think that's why The Acolyte feels like fan fiction, misunderstanding the influences, the meaning, the lore in order to press her own story on the franchise.
Fold in what I know about Star Wars and what I love about Star Wars into what she's always pushing for.
It's essentially like Headland saying,
I want to build the society to reflect me and what I want.
To reflect her cynical view on a noble group that is trying to be better, trying to be good.
I think the Jedi are a massive system of unchecked power, posing as a religion.
This particular institution may not be
You project an image of goodness and restraint.
group of heroes that are totally nobly intentioned.
A delusional cult that claims to control the uncontrollable, your emotions.
Has this guy never heard of Stoicism? Controlling your emotions? Letting your emotions wash off your back like a duck instead of being a sponge and absorbing them? It's basic Stoic principles.
Learn your Greek mythology like, I don't know, George fucking Lucas did.
In order to press that narrative, she illustrates the Jedi as a bunch of bumbling idiots that are selfish, are not in tune with their senses, and form attachments. This is not Jedi behavior. Headland, your critique of the Jedi only works if you write them to be that. If you actually look at what they are, Stoics, noble people just trying to be better.
Am I a good person?
Trying to turn towards the light, your critique falls apart.
But it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. And when, not if that happens, who will be strong enough to stop him?
An army of Jedi that turned to the light, that didn't snap. When Count Dooku snapped, there was Jedi to oppose them. When Anakin snapped, there was Jedi to oppose them.
I will do what I must.
There will always be good people standing up against evil, and that's what the Jedi are.
So be it, Jedi.
Like Qui-Gon said,
I don't turn toward the light because it means someday I'll win some sort of cosmic game. I turn toward it because it is the light.
Headland's grey Jedi worldview does not work within how George describes the Jedi. These are people turning towards the light, acknowledging their darkness but trying to be a better person.
You have conquered your hubris.
If some people have taken those ideas and then distorted them.
They want grey Jedi because they don't have a handle on their own morality themselves.
I feel like I'm a bit more in the middle than you guys, though.
Not existing inside of either side, you know, it's like I'm in the gray for sure.
Yeah.
But don't try to canonize it because it doesn't work.
However, a thinking person with any amount of self-reflection knows where they stand on this.
A thinking person questions all that. Say, is this really good? Am I really doing the right thing here?
Someone who sees that fear and hate, that anger and desire for control, and says my power comes from not needing these things.
It takes strength to resist the dark side. Only the weak embrace it.
The problem with Headland's postmodern view of the Force, to have it all, is that it can't exist within how George describes it, that the inherent nature of the dark side is corrupting.
I choose not to give you power.
It's like telling yourself that you're a Jedi and you're selfless, but also being able to dabble in Force lightning just because it's cool.
I know more about the Force than most people because Dave Filoni taught me and George Lucas taught him, and all these video games have fucked people up on what the Force is. You don't get to level up in the Star Wars world. That's a fucking video game.
It's wanting power but with none of the responsibility.
The freedom to wield my power the way I like.
It being able to access your emotions, but using your emotions for good.
There is no righteous anger in which you use anger for good.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil!
When you strike someone down in anger, it is a wicked act.
I hate them.
And eventually that wickedness will get to you.
I hate you.
Do you become more dangerous and fall to wickedness, or do you, in the face of fear, turn to good?
A Sith has a narrow view of good and evil.
Let me give you peace, Master Yaddle.
They deal in absolutes.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
They think using your emotions is an extension of their passion or care, to feel your hate and to use it.
You have anger, but you don't use them.
Versus a Jedi that takes a more stoic approach, to feel how something has made you and persist in moving towards the light. A harder choice, but the right one. Exactly what Luke does.
I'll never turn to the dark side.
The light side is joy, everlasting and difficult to achieve. The universal question is, am I a good person?
Are you a good person?
I try to be a good person.
To Lucas, the Force is an allegory for fear and how it manifests. It's fear of death, of losing control, of losing power.
Fear is the root of all evil. Fear destroys everything. Fear makes you make decisions you would not make. Fear makes you think you're making good decisions and they're poor decisions.
Fear is the path to the dark side.
And the struggle is always to be able to let go of all that stuff. Once you become afraid that somebody's going to take it away from you, or you're going to lose it, then you start to become angry.
Anger leads to hate.
And hate
leads to suffering.
Mostly on the part of the person who's selfish, because you spend all your time being afraid of losing everything you've got, instead of actually living.
I choose to live.
This extends to a more nebulous discussion about the idea of acceptance that the Acolyte makes a really poor argument for.
I've accepted my darkness.
Acceptance is a weird way to put this.
And the Jedi say I can't exist.
The Jedi can absolutely not accept Khmer and his Sith antics, and for good reason. For a society to prosper, it can't tolerate antisocial behavior.
Without having to answer to Jedi like you.
Violence, vengeance, and wrath. So why would the Jedi accept a lifestyle that centers around selfishness, hate, and retribution for what they feel owed? Oh wait.
Yeah, 100% dark side user right here.
I mean, that's why I was driven to write this story.
What we can ultimately take away from this is that this is Headland's view of the Sith, an extension of her own worldview and victim mentality.
Freedom. The freedom to wield my power the way I like.
This is why the Jedi are the good guys. The Jedi realize the Sith's worldview just cannot coexist within a peaceful society.
And what do you seek now, Sith?
Fortune and power.
Its inherently corrupting nature due to their core values. To take, seize power, and control. If you give an inch, they'll take a mile. While the Jedi come in as an authority like your parents, telling off a moody teen for being bratty and selfish. Because that's what the Sith are. Just moody teens.
Rules, rules, rules.
The Jedi are here to say, turn towards the light. That being a bratty, selfish person just isn't cool. But Headland doesn't understand this. Now, on the contrary to this, The Mandalorian felt like a show that completely understood Lucas's original intentions for Star Wars. It didn't just repeat a story we've already told before. It doubled down on what Lucas wanted, of introducing new characters and new locations, and pulled from the same inspirations Lucas did.
Flash Gordon was the inspiration.
But of course inspired by Westerns and...
Westerns, the samurai, the hero's journey. In a way, it felt emblematic of what George wanted to do with Star Wars. It wasn't just a mask, a mirror, a poor reflection. Andor was also allowed to feel fresh and interesting, achieving the same result but with different methods. Still expanding the world, building on existing characters, or letting us meet new ones in the way that George wanted, but doing it through the lens of a grimy political drama.
What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy. I burn my decency for someone else's future.
Andor was able to enrich the existing mythology, showing us the grimy reality of this universe.
I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
The political machinations and the true scale of the Empire. Sadly, this cannot be said for other properties in the franchise, making choices that break canon or undermine the original Skywalker saga. Now, it's true that Star Wars has done this before, overriding books with new media, but the changes made here are egregious to say the least. Within these sequel films, you could say the rise of Skywalker undermines Vader's sacrifice, his destiny of being the chosen one if Palpatine just returns.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
You could also say Force healing undermines every death, heck, every moment of tension in the franchise. Come on, Obi-Wan, why don't you just heal Qui-Gon, or heal Satine? You could also say catching blaster fire undermines every moment a Jedi is in a standoff. If they can just catch blaster fire, where's the tension? In storytelling, we care about a character with their back up against the wall, in a no-win scenario because we know the tools that they have available to them to get out of the situation. We know their limits, and now they're under pressure. But if they can just invent new tools, can heal, catch, or use the Force as an excuse to get out of every situation, then where are the stakes? Where's the reason to care? Now, this scrutiny isn't just applied to the magic system, it's also applied to characterization. A lot of people annoyed that they regressed Han's character development, from scoundrel to New Republic leader, made him a scoundrel again so he appeared familiar to audiences in 7, or how they completely just misunderstood Luke in 8.
He had sensed my power, and he feared it.
A character that believed in people so much he would lay down his weapon for those beliefs. A character that said, "I am a Jedi like my father before me."
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
I just said that. But no, episode 8 has him attempting murder at the first sign of his pupil turning to the dark side.
Who is this guy? How did the most optimistic, hopeful character in the galaxy turn into this hermit?
That optimism, that archetypal heroic nature, out the window.
I read that and I said, what? That's not what a Jedi does. A Jedi is optimistic, a Jedi has tenacity, he never gives up.
Now this brings us to The Acolyte, what fans have had issues with most so far. A show that is breaking canon at what feels like every turn. Now I'm willing to excuse Kiaramundi's age, seeing as the expanded universe birth year isn't canon. They could quite easily retcon his race to live for a prolonged lifetime. Who cares? What I can't excuse though is his amnesia.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
Then what's this, buddy? The point of the High Republic is that it was meant to be a time of peace. How can it be a time of peace if that peace is broken? Whilst the truth has been covered up, which isn't the Jedi way, the High Council now know that this is not a time of peace. Another thing fans have pointed out is silly things like the fire in space thing. And look, Star Wars has always had fire in space, but the way they used it made sense. A quick explosion when a ship burst. This just looks like a campfire.
All the space battles that had happened in the previous pictures were literally out in space. And what we were saying here was that this battle was still in the upper atmosphere. We weren't quite into space yet. And that gave us a license to do atmospherics. We could do smoke trails and flame. We could have hanging smoke and debris from damaged ships. And we could have drag on missiles. It's just a bit of a different look from how space battles have been treated previously.
Now, break right! Left. Ready? Let's do that again.
Now those are minor issues, little nitpicks, but this brings us to the big thing fans have issues with.
We were blessed with a miracle, the gift of life.
How the twins' existence undermines Anakin Skywalker's character.
I've encountered a divergence in the Force.
Located around a person.
A boy. It's possible he was conceived by the midichlorians.
For those not caught up, for those living under a rock, Anakin was conceived without a father. Very Jesus of Nazareth kind of vibe.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
Seeing as he was created thanks to the Force alone, this was an indication to Qui-Gon that he could potentially be the chosen one.
Twins are not normal children. They have no father.
Now, the creation of these twins in similar fashion completely takes away from Anakin's uniqueness, whilst also managing to undermine Palpatine, Plagueis, the Kaminoans, Mother Talzin, and pretty much anyone else who wanted to create a Force-sensitive being. Heck, it undermines the entire Bad Batch show and what those characters fought for, to keep Palpatine from getting Omega's special DNA. DNA he wanted in order to clone himself whilst retaining his midichlorian count. Hear that, Palpatine? Should have just done what these witches did.
The power of
Waste of time, mate. Ultimately, fans right now just feel shat on. Don't get me wrong, you have some amazing stuff being put out right now. Andor and the Bad Batch shows that enrich this universe. Then you have others that aim to break it, that have access to a new era of Star Wars and just don't know what to do with it.
What happens when there's something new? People have a tendency to overdo it.
Trying to add to the canon without first understanding the mythology of Star Wars.
And some people have taken those ideas and then distorted them, and you end up in a cult.
Shows that are masking our original reality. Shows that tell us
The galaxy is not a place that welcomes women like us.
When in reality, the truth is far from that.
And she's a girl, and she's a Jedi, and we frankly haven't quite seen enough of that, have we?
Star Wars has always been about great female heroines. Some of the coolest characters in the franchise are female. They're leaders like Leia, Satine, and Mon Mothma. They're strong-willed and have no time to waste like Padme, Sabine, and Bo-Katan. They may even be the hero of the story like Ahsoka, Rey, or Jyn. Or maybe even a villain like Ventress, Barriss, or Fennec. Or even Aurra Sing. She's sick. So, is it possible to do away with this erroneous notion that Star Wars hates women, because it's just not true? We know Star Wars has always been an inclusive galaxy, teeming with various species and life, so I want to pose the question, is there a way we can course correct? Well, yes. In understanding the teachings of Baudrillard and the message Lucas wants to convey, we can keep true to the heart of this sci-fi epic.
You know, it started here and it went there. And it's all about generations, and it's about the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers, and it's a family soap opera.
When we understand one's influences, how they created the image we see in front of us, we can avoid just mirroring their final result, and instead build something that accompanies and complements theirs, rather than something that aims to supplant the original image. This is what Filoni has done, a man that understands the essential heart of Star Wars, that understands Lucas's inspirations for the aesthetic, for the mood, and for the spirit of the saga. Moving forward with future shows and movies, I think it's important that every writer, director, and actor understands this, that the people making Star Wars shouldn't just understand Star Wars, they should understand where it came from, what it means, and what Lucas wants to say.
Learn your Greek mythology like, I don't know, George fucking Lucas did.
This way, you can do what Andor or The Mandalorian or The Bad Batch has done and create new films and shows within that world that adds depth and layers to the mythos without breaking it. You can champion what George always wanted, for them to be unique and different. You can shift in genres or tone and still remain intrinsically true to the nature of this universe if you understand it. And it's blatantly obvious the people behind the Acolyte don't understand Star Wars.
But if you can't look and see that Anakin blowing up the Death Star possibly killed millions and millions of people, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this right now.
You should just shut up.
It's just like,
shut up. I love you. You should shut
that
up.
is the beauty of
Okay. So this is all getting very heady. So what's the way out? Well, like I said, I think it's fair to build on the franchise, but from a place of understanding it. When you take 2 seconds to look into Stoic philosophy or Buddhism, you can understand George Lucas's philosophy on the world.
Learn your Greek mythology like, I don't know, George fucking Lucas did.
Its influences, its philosophy, its message that we're not fighting existing canon, undermining existing characters or events, becoming a mirror, a poor reflection.
Distorted them, and you end up in a cult.
A delusional cult.
Through this outlook, we can provide meaningful commentary whilst understanding the message that makes Star Wars so pervasive and meaningful, one of self-actualization. One of turning towards the light.
The universal question is, am I a good person?
Look, I'm just a dude with a few ideas. Now, am I excited for the future of Star Wars? Well, to be honest, not really.
Why mess with its success? We're never going to catch lightning in a bottle again. We had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Let's let the memories suffice.
Look, I love The Bad Batch. Andor Season 2 promises to be strong, and the talent behind the skeleton crew looks promising, but the Acolyte has really put a sour taste in my mouth. The Rey movie, the Heir to the Empire movie doesn't really get me excited. Also, is that Taika movie still happening?
It's also been announced that you're going to be directing one of the new Star Wars films.
Yeah. Anyways, I want to ask you guys, what do you want to see from Star Wars? For me, it's an Old Republic movie going into the ancient origins of the Jedi and the Sith and the ancient war with the Mandalorians, pre-High Republic, really leaning into the spirituality and the philosophy that defines the Jedi and the Sith. Alright, hey guys, I had a ton of fun making this video. I love Star Wars. I don't get to talk about it as much on the channel as other topics. But yeah, I think I got all my thoughts on the Acolyte and where Star Wars is at off my chest. That being said, where are we looking towards the future? As some of you know, I've been working on an X-Men video. This is part 2 of my pitch in making an X-Men movie for the MCU. The first movie is up on YouTube. I'm making the second movie now. And this is only being made thanks to my Patreon subscribers. You guys seriously are the reason that I get to continue making these videos. It's your support and backing that allows me to make content like this. With that being said, the next video is going to be my X-Men video. I'm so excited to finally bring you what I've been working on. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao.